We often hear academic leaders use the phrase value-based education when describing the depth of their learning environment for young people. But how, in fact, are Milwaukee area primary and secondary schools developing moral character as well as strong minds? That's our focus on this edition of Ethically Milwaukee. Hello, I'm Mark Segrist. It's great to have you with us. During the next half hour, we're going to learn how Milwaukee area educators are helping young people look beyond themselves. How are students, for example, being nurtured to appreciate the value of their community and society as a whole? It's a process that involves exposure to a combination of factors, from tolerance to ethics and use of one's knowledge for the greater good. We're joined in the studio today by three outstanding leaders in Milwaukee public and private education who share that commitment. Brother Bob Smith is president of Messmer Catholic Schools. Dr. Cynthia Elwood is principal of Hartford University School. And Juanice Shalaby serves as principal at Salam School. It's great to have you all with us today. Thank you so much
for being here,
sharing your expertise and your passion for this topic. Brother Bob, start us off, if you would. How do you define value-based education, and how is it applied at Messmer Catholic Schools?
Mark, I think of all of the things that we do at Messmer and have done for over 80 years, values, religion, morality are the key to everything. And we talk to students about athletics, about participating in forensics, and it's not the winning, but it's respecting other people, it's doing things honorably, and even the issue of academics, that doesn't matter if you get an A, what matters is that it's your work. And whether you use the internet or something else, if you cheat, it's not yours. So every part of our life is connected to religion, morality, ethics, and we believe that that's what helps us be who we are.
On a daily basis, and a teacher can bring it up at various parts of the day?
Every day, all day, and in most cases when I deal with a student, whether it be on a disciplinary issue or something else, the first question I ask is, why did you do it? What made you do it? And how does that look to us as a community? Because you're representing over 80 years of alumni and many people who support our schools, and it's not just the winning. Again, it's not your reputation as an outstanding student or school. It's who you are as a person and a child of God.
And Dr. Elwood, one of the things that really impresses me about your website, as a partner with MPS, is that they talk about at Hartford University School, even K through 8th grade, social justice is part of the learning process. I'm really impressed by that.
Oh, thank you.
Expand on that for me, if you would.
Well, one of the things that I tell our departing 8th graders when we pull them in as they're practicing their completion ceremony is I say to them, if we have nurtured your intellect and not your heart, we have failed you, because the world does not need more smart, mean people. And indeed, like Brother Bob at Hartford, we are teaching character, nurturing the heart, every single moment of every single day. It starts with the modeling, the way that the teachers approach each other, approach the children, the love that they show for the children. In every single moment, kids are asked to make good choices and to take responsibility for the choices they make. In the curriculum, it is part of, if you look at a historical moment, asking how different groups might have experienced that moment in history. The community activism that some of our children are involved in, it really is every moment of our day.
I want to get back to how you apply it at the different maturity levels of the children on your campus. I think that's fascinating. Mr. Shalaby, had the pleasure of visiting your campus, and you have explained to me in the past that your faith tradition, Islam, is wrapped around the entire school day.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Ethics, values is very much a part of the structured school day for young people. Tell us about that.
Well, in our school, we teach the whole person. It is not about the academics that makes our school outstanding. No, it's just like creating this God consciousness with our children. This is how we are approaching math, this is how we're approaching science, this is how we're approaching English, this is how we're approaching any other discipline, whether the discipline is curricular or co-curricular. It's just creating this God awareness, telling the student that their actions, their choices, whether they are personal or whether they are pertinent to others, you are accountable before God. We have great program in our school that's character education, and our school for the third year has won the character education prize for promising practices, and also our school has won the state Project Citizen. And we look at these as results that would measure how God conscious our students are becoming. We ask them to be God conscious, but at the same time not to do God's work. That means God doesn't need your help. You are accountable in front of God for all the choices and the actions that you're going to commit. And the first thing that you will need to consider is that the freedom and the respect of others, whether others conform to what you believe in or whether others are at deference to what you believe in, because there is always a wider parameter that will put you in the same area with others, is that you're all humans.
That's one of the fundamental principles of Islam, is not one's relationship towards others.
Exactly. You are held accountable in front of God by how you are dealing with others. And actually, if others are not within the faith realm with you, that even puts more accountability on you to deal with them according to your code of ethics that will consider their freedom and their respect first.
Yeah. Dr. Elwood, explain to us how you approach this ethics and values on your campus at the different grade levels. For example, in kindergarten, how do you introduce a young mind to this concept?
Well, first of all, through showing our love for the children and surrounding the children by a community that nurtures them, where they feel safe and they see how people treat one another. But conceptually, at the kindergarten level, we definitely talk about fairness. Children are certainly capable of thinking about what's fair, looking through other children's eyes. If you see a child hurt, we have our children stop and think about, what is that child feeling? Why is that child crying? And the same thing with joy. So children at a very, very young age can act with love and character, and we nurture that.
It's critical that that's introduced at that level, because as the child matures, then he or she looks at society from a larger lens, and those early lessons are applied to much more complicated situations, I would imagine. How do you see, as the children grow up, as you first expose them to this concept in kindergarten, as they go into first, second, third grade, how do you see them mature with it? What is that like for you?
Well, they get more sophisticated about how they solve problems and approach each other. I was in a third grade class earlier this week, and the teacher was saying that her kids were talking about a mediator on the playground, and she didn't know about any mediator program that we had operating on the playground, so she asked her kids about it. And the children said, every day we get together and we appoint a mediator from among ourselves, so that if there are any conflicts on the playground, the kids come to the mediator and solve it. To me, it's just like a perfect example of the way kids then develop the skills in order to be leaders themselves. And as we get older, we see it, of course, in our middle school kids and the kind of care that they show towards the younger children. We had last spring, for example, we had to truly take shelter during a tornado warning, and it was the after-school program was in effect. And not surprisingly, when I announced over the PA system that children needed to seek shelter, some of the younger children became upset and they wanted to run down the steps, and some of them started crying, and I immediately saw our older children calm them down, take them by their hands. And it's those moments when kids are unguarded, where they're not thinking about who's looking at me, what kind of consequence am I going to have. Those are the moments where we see our work.
Yeah, it manifests itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Share with us for a moment, if you would, Brother Bob, in your situation at Mesmer, how you have seen examples of how you have seen your students play out their understanding of ethics and values in a situation that may arise on campus or a particular subject, or share with us, if you would, what that's like for you.
Sure. There are a number of examples, and I can remember back after 9/11 where it was really unpopular in our city and around the country to show any sympathy, empathy with Islam. And I remember St. Joan Antietam
Yes.
and Mesmer both reached out to the Muslim schools.
Yes.
And while it may have been unpopular, our position was, A, don't stereotype and judge everyone, and B, it was the right thing. Actually 2 years ago, we heard about Waukesha West having a problem raising money for the academic decathlon. Now, it's a public school, wealthy district, but the kids who had won the state title needed to go to the nationals. Our student council got together and said, well, let's help them. So they had spaghetti dinners, and the beauty of it, that it was the right thing to do. It was reaching out to a community that these kids probably would never visit in their wildest dreams. Had nothing to do with economics. It had to do with helping someone who needed it. And you know, each day as we begin with prayer, we begin with the creed, and that starts with 4-year-old kindergarten, and it makes a difference because, as Doctor said, you know, when our kids graduated, we had the old, I forget what we called them, but they call them shout-outs now.
Yes.
What shocked me, but made me as proud as I've been in 22 years at Mesmer, was that over 95% of our kids began with, I want to begin by thanking God.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't tell them to say it. They chose to say it. And that means...
Appreciating one's blessings in life.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brother Bob touched on something very sensitive and very relevant. Juanice, you have had to use the post 9/11 experience as a teaching tool, I would assume, many times for your students, where your students have been shunned or misunderstood by some parts of greater Milwaukee. And how have you explained to them that when one is mistreated or misunderstood that way, it doesn't represent the larger society?
We ask our students to maintain individual perspective on people's behavior. That means if somebody has showed any kind of behavior that doesn't show the best level of tolerance, this person is representing himself only. He's not representing the group he's coming from. He's not representing any demographics. Like, say, for instance, we, after 9/11, although I was not a principal at Salem School at the time, actually I was teaching in Chicago at the time, we have experienced a great deal of support from the non-Muslim community. It was amazing. It was really amazing. Our sisters, like, say, if I'm walking down the street the way I am, you can tell that I'm a Muslim.
Right.
I'm not having things. I'm pretty
Dressed
much,
as a businessman.
yes, I'm dressed in the Western fashion. However, our sisters, they will look like Muslims because they are scarfed.
Yes.
Well, after 9/11 happened, so many of the sisters felt very apprehensive that would go out in public this way because pretty much they didn't want to face the public reaction, and sometimes the public reaction is not the most informed.
Right.
Well, we had American neighbors that did not belong to the faith at all, who took them to the grocery store, the grocery shop with them, or sometimes even did the grocery shopping for them. If this tells us anything, it tells us that really the American people, and I'm not saying that because I'm on TV, have shown the greatest level of tolerance, not just to take that, but also not to assimilate that or not to interpret this horrible act as an act that really covers the whole ideology of the Muslim community, either here in America or even overseas. we were very impressed. We were very thankful. Even the authorities, I was working at a school at Morton Grove at the time, which one of the northern suburbia in Chicago. They even they put an extra shift to guard our building. And I remember even the sheriff saying that it is my responsibility to guard you as citizens here from any kind of uninformed public reaction.
And that's the key, uninformed.
Absolutely.
That's the key.
Uninformed, because it has been a difficult time.
Absolutely.
And it's quite unfortunate that the American awareness of the Muslim citizens here in America got triggered mostly by such horrible action. But there is always a good of everything. We say it is not it, it's what you make out of it.
This is why ethics and values is so important in greater Milwaukee education. As we said before, even at the K-4 level, why is it important? Why do children have to be made aware, even in a public school setting, made aware of greater society?
There isn't anything more important, Mark. Nothing more important than raising up our young people to do good, to care about one another, and to lead us into a world that will be more harmonious. There just really is not a more important reason to teach, to work with children at school. And
is it a fine line in a public school setting when you're teaching morality and ethics? Are some parents concerned that, well, maybe we're crossing the line here, maybe we're becoming too spiritual, even religious?
Not in the least.
It's not.
This is something parents welcome.
It's two separate things in some respect. Are
No,
morality and ethics separate from
I'm no religious scholar, but in every world religion that I'm aware of, God is love.
Correct.
So when we say love, it's God by another name.
Right.
And it's God by many names. And so, I was actually talking to a group of kids that I work with daily. It's my Justice and You class, and the children that I work with are either playground pals or study buddies. And we go to the floor, the 3rd through 5th grade floor, and work with the children on their studies while my guidance counselor takes another group out into the playground, and they work with the primary kids on the playground. And I was asking them what I should say today. And the first thing that was said was a Muslim girl who said, in this school, we really value everybody's cultural and religious backgrounds. And we looked around, and we had Muslim, Jewish, Protestant, and Catholics among us, as well as one child who was agnostic. And we all were speaking the same language, and that is the language of love.
Brother, in your experience, when a young person is exposed to this, is exposed to the greater world, greater society, different spiritual backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, how does that open them up? I mean, the interactions with others is obvious, but how does that change them as a person? What has been your experience?
My experience, Mark, and it goes back probably 30 years. Prior to me coming into education, I was a parole officer in Detroit, and I have said to students and faculty over the years that I found the most faith behind bars. But the other piece that I have said repeatedly is, rather than point fingers at this high school or that high school, remember that any crime that's committed in this country, the student or the adult went to some school. But if you look at people who have had a serious foundation of ethics, faith, morality, it doesn't guarantee that they won't do something wrong and make a mistake. All of us do. But they always have something to go back to that is greater than them. But it takes the adults to teach tolerance and to teach understanding and the importance of learning about other faiths and religions. And, Messmer has the majority of students who are not Catholic. And we celebrate that. It's nothing that's bad. Which,
in my opinion, is real Catholicism.
Exactly.
Right. That's what it's meant to be. But does Greater Milwaukee reinforce ethics and values after its after it's emphasized in the classroom, on the campus, or once the children leave campus and hit the street before they're heading home? I mean, do they go through sort of a gray area of, I mean, what is Greater Milwaukee a partner in this, or not as much of a partner as it should be?
I think it has room to grow as a greater partner. I think, you know, we sometimes walk that thin line between separation of church and state, but we forget that the majority of people in the state belong to a faith of some kind. A couple hours ago, I came through the airport, and as I was going through the parking structure, the lady that took my money, as I left, she said, "Have a blessed day." And I literally put the brakes on the car, and I thought, you know, A, there's no identification on me. B, the fact that you would say that to another human being. And all the way home, I thought about that. Have a blessed day.
Yeah.
And we need to do more of that.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on that if I could, Mark.
Please, I'm interested.
Honestly, yesterday I heard the statistic that Milwaukee has the biggest gap in unemployment rate between African American males and white males in the country. And I think that speaks to whether we've arrived as a city.
And it's been going on for years.
Absolutely.
For years.
I have to raise questions about the degree to which we fully fund education in our community and the amount of resources that children in the suburbs get versus children in the city. I don't think we've arrived. I think we need these children to help us lead in that direction because we have a long way to go.
Juanice, what kind of reinforcement is Greater Milwaukee giving your children at Salam School in terms of ethics and values when they leave your campus, before they reach home?
A lot of things, actually. First, my school is part of the Milwaukee Choice Program.
Yes.
So we get good funding for that, and we put that to the best use, definitely. The second thing is that our school exists in Milwaukee, and we get all the support that we want from there. Now, is there an area for growth or an improvement? Yes, there is. We do not expect from them as much as we expect from ourselves to give them, because they are also burdened. I would have to tell you that. For instance, there is significant symptoms and amounts of poverty in Milwaukee. Also, we get some Somali refugees influx coming to Milwaukee area. And these are all people that are coming to the system, and the system will have to assimilate them, and after that finds jobs for them.
Right.
We take our part for that. That means we had a code drive to give out to those people because, well, you know, that's winter in Wisconsin. Everybody needs a code.
Right.
And we had food drive for them. And after that, even we invited some of them that have certain expertise to work for us. So pretty much it is not what Milwaukee can do for us rather than what we can do for Milwaukee.
Your congregation is very proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are there. We are there not just to inform and tell people that we exist, but at the same time we tell them that, you know what, we can help out with things. We can help out those people. And those people, by the way, don't have to belong to the Islamic faith at all. At all. We are just doing that because they're humans, they're people.
We only have about a minute left. Your greatest mentor as a kid in school, in terms of impressing upon you ethics and values, who comes to mind?
My mom.
Your mother?
Yeah. My dad retired as an assistant superintendent. He was a man of great credentials and everything, but my mom was the best teacher I've ever come across.
Every day?
Every day.
What she said or what she did, her example? Or?
I would tell you, I would use what my mom would say about any of my actions as a yardstick to measure whether this is the action that I should have committed.
And now you're an educator.
Yes.
Doctor?
First of all, I promised my Justice and you kids a shout out, so thanks a lot, you
You
guys.
got it.
My mentors were other children. They were the children of the civil rights movement. I grew up at a time when kids were changing the world and facing police dogs and powerful water hoses, and yet pursuing right and good and having the courage of their convictions. And that has shaped my life
Students learn from other students.
Yeah.
Brother Bob, we just have a few seconds. In your Capuchin Franciscan formation,
Yes,
who was your greatest mentor?
Brother Booker Ash.
Oh, what a wonderful man he was.
You know, he was my uncle,
Absolutely.
but he was also a person who was countercultural, who went everywhere, who had a smile on his face, and he sought out the poor.
So pastoral.
Yes.
The image of pastoral. Thank you so much for all of you coming in. What an
thank
honor it
you.
was to talk about this with all of you. And we hope you're with us again next week for our next edition of Ethically Milwaukee. Thank you so much, folks.
Oh, no,
you.
thank
What
you.
I have
joy
to tell
this
you,
was.
my daughter's